Hello there! I'm Squire Callahan Ridgeborn, almost a battle master, always a wizard, and tonight I am joined by Sir Mauriac, also known as Sensei Paco, a Paragon Wizard in the Rising Winds. Paco, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Paco, can you tell me about how you got your start in Amtgard?
So, back in 1999, it was my senior year of high school. A friend of mine that I hadn't seen since really middle school, well, acquaintance, I should say, he bumps into me in the hall of the high school. And of course, he has grown from kind of a dumpy, middle schooler to this, like, giant of a man. And he sees me in the hall and greets me very warmly and says, "Hey, I'm trying this LARP called Amtgard, and you should come try it. Come. We play Saturdays over at the Valpo University."
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just like, first off, shell shocked at like his absolute transformation, but then like thinking, well, that's something I could try. I've always been interested in fantasy stuff, so I came out that following Saturday, and that was kind of a cold day in March. There was a little bit of snow left on the ground. Tried it out, failed miserably at performing at all well in combat, and absolutely loved it. I felt like the biggest idiot at the same time as like having the most fun I have ever had. And so I just kind of stuck with it, and I'm on 26 years now and counting.
Wow. So I want to know, when did you transition from being Mauriac to Paco? What happened there?
Okay, so it wasn't really so much like a one-way transition sort of thing. Like they're both technically valid characters. It's just at this point I've been known more as Paco to most people. But essentially, I started off the game as Mauriac because I wanted to bring a wizard character in, and because wizard's always been like my favorite fantasy class trope or whatever. And so I got to 6th level wizard, and I said, well, there's not much more I can do with this character. So I'm going to bring in another character that can play all the other classes in the game. So I'm not just playing wizard and accumulating credits into a class that I can't really do anything with at this point. And so I brought in Paco, and I started playing monk. And Paco was just kind of my not so serious character that I got to do some fun role play with and level up the other classes. And so when I had the robe on, I was Mauriac, and when I had the penguin getup, I was Paco. And then somewhere around like late 2000s, early 2010s, I lost my robe at an event, and so I didn't get it replaced until really just a few years ago. So I was just always Paco, and I was introduced as Paco, so everybody only knew me as Paco.
Mhm.
So now it's just a matter of like, every once in a while, like I'll tell people it's both, and if I've got the robe on, it's Mauriac. But if people see me in the robe and they see my face and call me Paco, it's par for the course at this point.
Yeah, having multiple names is a thing that most people just don't do anymore.
There's a handful I've seen here or there, and there are people who have changed names entirely as well. But multiple characters, it's just a little too much for most people to remember, it seems.
I have hard enough time remembering one name. You get one name. I'll either learn your Amtgard name or your government name. I'm not learning two.
I've had that problem with Facebook, seeing like interacting more with people on Facebook, and then going to Amtgard events is like, oh hey Jim, oh crap, what was your Amtgard name again?
Yeah. Paco, because I'm going to call you Paco for the rest of the video.
And that is
It's
totally
just,
fine.
I'm sorry, I can't call you Mauriac. That's Paco the Kung Fu Penguin.
And that
Um,
is, I'm a penguin, so people remember me more easily there too as well.
it's just such a unique character that you've done so much with and impacted so many people's gaming experience. It's hard to get out of that shadow, I think.
You're not wrong, but which is kind of funny because Mauriac was the original.
Can you tell us a fun fact about yourself?
Yes, actually. So I was the first person to be given Master Wizard, now considered Paragon, after we became a kingdom. So we had other people that had been given the title of Master Wizard before that, and I don't know if it was a matter of like EH just like said yes, you can do this, or if there was some other arrangement that we had, or if it was just legit to give them at a barony or lower level before then. But essentially, it was coronation or mid-reign, I forget back then if we were on the same schedule. But March of 2003, I got my title, and that was the first one that was given out after we had become the kingdom. And that's not, again, like, that's probably not fair to say that I was the first period, but I was the first given out by us as a kingdom.
You're also a bit of a smith as well. You're trying to do the smithing path around Night Quest, but you also do some battle game design. What's your favorite kind of battle game?
Oh man, see, I often go on the principle of simple is often better. I've done a number of games where, like, or played in a number of games where people have had to explain a fair number of, like, complicated things, and you can see people's eyes gloss over, and, you know, sometimes if it's not key to winning, people won't even bother with it and things like that, which I've had my share of designing games along those lines as well. But, like, I really do like a lot of the classics. One of my ongoing things is I do variations of Ring the Bell, but I try to, like, elevate it to higher levels and make it more slightly more complex, so that it's not just like, oh yeah, you gotta go ring the bell. So I've done things where you have to hit three bells at once, or most recently at the October event for Lockhaven, I actually had it so, you know, you had to ring an actual bell using, because it was a carnival theme, an actual carnival bell ringing, you know, implement a high ringer. So I'm always trying to do
slam it, it goes up and rings the bell. Yeah.
Yeah, you actually have to use force to do it, which was totally in theme with the event and everything. So I enjoy designing around stuff like that, variations on those kind of themes. But yeah, like stuff that with a fairly simple goal generally, because I learned a long time ago, most people, and not everybody, and I'm not saying that it's not valid to design more complex games for those who enjoy it, but I learned a long time ago that most games are an excuse for people to fight and cast at each other. So generally speaking, I prefer stuff that has a clear, easily figured out goal with good strategy, though, to it.
What made you start playing Wizard all the way back in V6?
Well, I mean, other than the fact that Wizard was absolutely broken back then, it's just a lifelong love of Wizards as a fantasy trope and everything. And it did not hurt that, like, by second level, I could take a lightning bolt, charge it, throw it at somebody in 6 points of plate, and they were just dead at that time.
Oh.
Like I said, V6 Wizard, V7 Wizard even still was absolutely broken. There was a rule in place at the time where you could only have one of each type of caster per 10 people on a side, because of how overpowered casters ended up being. But that also meant that, like, if you have 3 people at your local park who want to play Wizard, and you have 6-man teams, then one person is going to end up having to not play Wizard, which was not fun for anybody. And, you know, having characters, or, you know, people out there able to just kind of kill you from 50 feet away, or even 100 feet with an extended finger of death back then, or, you know, being able to do mass spells that could kill an entire field. A lot of that was just overpowered to the point of not being fun for the people that were not able to do that. So, you know, but personally, I was attracted to the just primarily because I always liked Wizard characters, and I always wanted to have a Wizard character, and it was a possibility at the time. And it didn't hurt, though, that, like, me as a kid that was not very athletic could basically be on par with people who were out there and played.
You say that Wizard was super broken in V6. Can you give me some more examples of what could Wizard do?
So, like I said, by second level you got Lightning Bolt, and in V6 you didn't even have a limit to how many you could carry either. So you could essentially have a bucket full of Lightning Bolts at second level, and anything, you hit somebody anywhere with that at that time, and it would just kill them. Right through armor, just dead. It was not engulfing, but it basically, yes, if you got hit, you died.
Swords, shields, everything?
Not swords. Okay. So, like, but if you had armor on, it would go through the armor, essentially, or just destroy the armor and you. I forget exactly what it was considered, like, if you got resurrected, like, if you would have that armor left or not. But yeah, essentially, like, anywhere on your body you got hit, whether it was protected by armor or not, it would just kill you. And that was, again, starting at second level. And it would also destroy weapons and shields, but, you know, the person would be alive still. Then, when you hit third level, Fireball did the same thing, but to anything and everything it touched while in motion. So, If you're way over there and, you've got your friend Bob with a shield over there, and I throw my fireball that hits his shield, bounces off, hits you, his shield is destroyed and you're dead. And if it then rolls over and hits Tim's foot, Tim is also now dead. And you could call it remain active, and at that point, after all those people were dead, if another person came along and stepped on it, they would also be dead. By 6th level, wizards were also able to do things like killing grounds, where you set up a circle, and then when you would go in, do a quick incantation, everybody, including yourself in the circle, is dead. There's, of course, the infamous Doomsday, where you count Doomsday 1 through Doomsday 350, and then everybody in your line of sight is dead. Prior to that, you'd also gotten Wind, which was harder to cast because it was a much more involved incantation, but everybody not protected at that point goes back to base. And that's all standard spell list stuff. There were also some other additional things that you could do where you sacrificed a certain amount of spell points to summon a golem, and golems were, you basically transform somebody with a sacrifice a certain number of lives, and now that golem has a bunch of special abilities, that only monsters would get, and could go out and wipe the field. Oh, and base 6th level spell was Transform, where you have a costume for a monster, you go up to somebody, and you cast Transform on them. They sacrifice a certain number of lives, depending on the type of monster you want to turn them into, and now that person is a monster under your control. So you could do stuff like Giants, which, based on a loophole because it doesn't specify what type of giants, you could transform them into a Titan, which could swing siege weapons. That's exactly as bad as your face indicates.
Did you could also at that time still like one tap, just engulfing kill?
Yeah, and that is also on equipment. My first Kingdom event I went to, somebody had transformed someone into a Titan, and this guy was mowing through my team. I cast Dispel at him mid rampage, and like he came across me multiple times, never once swung at me. I don't know if he didn't catch that I was casting Dispel on him. I finished the Dispel, I'm like, "You're dispelled." He's like, "Didn't I hit you?" I'm like, "No." And like took him out there. And so like you could dispel them, but you also had to have a wizard with Dispel on your team, and Dispel wasn't rechargeable like it is these days.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, so there were certain limitations. Like the structure of the game was very different at the time as well. But every class had a specific number of lives for games, rather than having like lives based on the game type. In Death was a 5-minute count as well. Ice Ball and Entangle, both the same effect, different classes got them, was a 5-minute freeze. So imagine being frozen for 5 minutes. The other thing about that too is Fireball could free somebody from Ice Ball, though. Or if you charged 2 and threw them both at the same time, you would kill somebody that was Ice Balled. Petrify was another spell ball you got, I think, at 4th level. Permanently froze the person until they took a death, or they were freed by... Heal would turn it into the effects of Entangle, and so you would have to wait out the 5 minutes. And Stone to Flesh, which is something that Druids got, would immediately cure you. But otherwise, you are petrified until you decide it is no longer worth standing here, and you just take the death. Kind of think there. Oh, and some spells were base 50 feet, and extension doubled that to 100 feet. So by the time you get Finger of Death, if you extend it, it is now 100 feet. And granted, we didn't have Ambulant at the time, so you kind of needed it a little more. But 100 feet is really far in this game. All things considered, there were a lot of people that were mad when V8 hit and they really nerfed wizards, but we kind of needed it.
It sounds like it. I mean, that was a lot. What was different between V6 and V7?
So V7 was kind of more of a structural change than anything else.
Okay.
There were a couple of differences in spells, but very minor in terms of what you got. So in V6, spells didn't have schools at all.
Okay.
So like if you cast, if you were playing a monk, for instance, you got a list of spells you were immune to, and that was it. And then when you got to V7, they actually made they put everything into classes or in spell schools for the casting classes, and then like when immunities were given out and everything, then like you actually got immunity to command or immunity to death or whatever. And so actually monks weren't originally immune to all verbals; they were immune to, I think, death and control, if I'm recalling correctly. And they also still got immunity to poison, which was its own categorization in the game at the time. So, it was primarily a lot of stuff like that was helpful in making it simpler to understand the game instead of just rote memorization of this class is immune to these things and whatnot. And a few other structural changes that it's not easy for me to remember at the moment because they were really not as impactful as that one specific change. But really, like, casters were still like way up here in terms of power level. They still had all the same, things like that. Healers could do a mass sleep spell, which you couldn't kill people in, but that didn't mean that you couldn't go around, destroy all their armor, and, well, if you wound them, you're not killing them. See, druids had a similar thing to the golem summoning with elementals, and you could summon a wave elemental that unlimited could just say wave, 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 and everybody in front of them would be pushed back 20 feet. And
unlimited?
Unlimited, yeah, that's what they...
Wave, and you have to go 20 feet away.
Yep. So you could chase people down saying wave, 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 and they just keep shoving backward.
Yeah, I could do that all day. We can... Park is now the fitness Grand Pacer test. Let's keep going.
So yeah, when V8 hit, first off, a big part of that was removing lives from classes so that, you don't have classes that are balanced on lives. So, like, no more, well, the only reason why you would ever want to play warrior is because they have 6 lives and can wear armor. It's, and then, like, well, you only get 4 lives as other classes. Oh, and druids, by the way, got immunity control by 5th level, I think it was. So they had an innate immunity as a casting class. But, when V8 hit the casters, it was like, okay, we want everybody that wants to play a caster to be able to play a caster at the same time. But in order to do that, we're going to have to take them down to here.
It sounds like it was very much a necessary thing to drop caster power down. I mean, area of effect, line of, like, cone of sight damage, like that's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the people were complaining, well, I'm out of shape and, like, I need to be able to be that much better. It's like, okay, but what's going on is in shape people who are athletic and can fight are playing these classes, and they're going around, like, clearing the fields because they basically multiplied their power level by, like, 10 times, and not only can they kill you in melee, but they're also killing you from 100 feet away when they want to.
Right. Yeah, you can't balance for the best and you can't balance for the worst. You have to balance for the average. And you can't put a rotund requirement on a casting class.
Yes, you must be this overweight to play wizard. That would not fly.
So I've heard from various people different legends about V6 and V7, like barbarians eating grass, druids had to carry a tree around with them, archers had to have specific types of bows. But it was more optimal to carry around a potted plant depending on your park and where you were playing than trying to... Because there were some spells you had to be touching a tree to cast.
So there were 2 main ones for druid. And actually, you say the potted plant thing, I actually knew at least a guy from the Rising Winds that did that. His name is Zuggs. He was from our park. And yeah, there was Commune, which was essentially kind of like a limited sanctuary, where you go up to the tree with your back to it, and you say, Commune, 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 or you sit down, and as long as you are touching that tree, you cannot be hurt. But the tree could be hurt. Somebody could actually go in, and we had mechanics for 10 hits with a red weapon would destroy the tree, or fireball, or whatever. So you could just, like, pop them out of the tree. And then there was also Plant Door, where you go up, you cast Plant Door, and as long as you are touching the tree, you cannot be seen until you start casting at somebody, in which case they know that you're there, but as soon as you stop casting, they can no longer see you, and they can no longer affect you. So as long as you're in that tree, you can cast Call Lightning at people, and then as soon as like they come up and start casting something at you, you just stop, and they can't affect you.
Carrying around an invisibility cloak at that point.
Yeah, with the potted plants, which was kind of one of those things where, like, today we'd say, yeah, that's a gray area, don't do that. They absolutely, like, that was absolutely something that some people had done just to make sure that they had it at all times. So, not specific, actually, nothing that involved trees, no, but we had Circle of Protection at the time was, there were multiple classes, I believe, that could get them, including Wizard, and you could, when you cast Circle of Protection, you and anybody in there could not be seen or affected by anything outside. You also, like, people had to act as though you're not there. Insubstantial as a thing where you can be seen and heard, you just can't be affected. No, we actually had to pretend that person wasn't there. Same thing with, like, you know, people going into teleport. The person saying teleporting and walking right by you, but you're just like, I don't see that person. That's, I mean, what person? There's no one there. I don't know why I'm talking like this. And, like, obviously some people would cheese it. Obviously some people would overcorrect and be like, well, I can't do anything against this now. And so that's why in V8, when they did the insubstantial effect, it was a matter of, like, we're not gonna do this. Like, you have to pretend they're not there. They are. You're gonna know they're there. They're physically there. They're visible to you anyway. So let's stop making this a requirement or making a part of the game. But yeah, like, Circle Protection then had a similar effect to that, where, like, oh, they just popped out of existence. But if you went into a Circle of Protection yourself, you could then see them and affect them as long as you were within range. So sometimes there'd be, like, these little wizard wars where, like, one wizard would pop out of existence because, oh, he must have gone into Circle of Protection. So you go over and you put down your Circle of Protection, pop into COP yourself, and aha! And then you just start casting at them and see who can get off their finger of death first.
Okay. It feels a lot like V6 and V7 were more proper LARPs, and V8 feels more like a sport to me a lot of times than a LARP. Like if you've got a like a scale, right? And on one end of the scale, you've got full-blown historically accurate combat. And on the other end of the scale, you have Dungeons and Dragons, like literally rolling dice to see if your +3 greatsword can hit. Like, Amtgard's somewhere in the middle. We don't actually try to hurt people with metal weapons. We're, you know, we don't get to call light on shots.
Yeah.
But it feels like V6 and V7, like, if we were in the middle now in V8, we were more towards the D&D side of things for V6 and V7, because while we still had that same hit effect, you had a lot more role play items that were built into the game that you had to participate with, like pretending.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably fair in that sense. I think it was slightly more meant to be more LARPy at the time, and less of a buffer sport in particular. And like, even today, like, I do feel like the opportunity is still there to be more LARP-like. It's just the culture has been a little bit more towards the competitive sports end of it, or at least for the Rising Winds. My understanding is that, like, because I haven't done a lot of travel myself, but like, one of the junior crats for Keep this year, I was talking to her, and it does sound like her park is much more role-play oriented. And I've heard the game described as a bridge game. So, like, on the one end of it, you have stuff like the SCA, where it's more about, like, you wear armor, you hit each other with, like, you know, somewhat dangerous weapons still. Boo Hurt's probably a better example of that, where it's, you know, you're wearing armor, you're actually hitting each other with, you know, blunted swords and whatnot. And then on the other end, you have stuff like Nero, where it's, you know, you've got skill points and you gain, you know, endless levels, and you go out and you role play and you have hit points and things like that. Mm-hmm. We're like smack dab in the middle of all of that, and the opportunity is there to make it more of a sport or make it more of a role play oriented true LARP where we want to. That's where I really miss events like Discord and there were some like Zombies Ate My Amtgard back in the day, where it was much more about setting up these role play oriented events where you got to actually, have a an environment more suited for that. But then you also had events where like, okay, we're just going to play a bunch of battle games and not a lot of role play, but maybe a couple things with night quests and things like that. And there were options around you, and each local park still had the autonomy to be able to say, look, we're a role play park. Every week we're going to do a quest at some point, and we'll throw monsters at you guys, but you can just go out and interact as your characters or whatever. And then some parks are just like, yeah, we want to ditch, and that's all we want to do. There was a fair bit of that back in the day, and Pone is actually a park where we started off with more of a roleplay culture, where we would do freeform roleplay a lot, and we would do those kind of things. And then a few people came in that shifted the culture, and we became much more of a ditch park. And they weren't as interested in it. And, we got a lot of people that were really good at fighting out of that, but we also kind of ended up with a lot fewer of the people who liked the full class roleplay aspect of it.
I feel like that's a strength of Amtgard, though, being able to shift into full roleplay or into full boffer, like going and doing night quest at Keep, and then a month and a half later doing full sport at Bridge Wars is a lot of fun for me, at least. So I think that's a strength and not a weakness.
I do agree on that. I just also, the problem is when it happens at a local level and you see the culture shift from one to another, you always end up losing people because they don't have another park close enough usually to go to. So it's just like, well, this turned me off of the game, and they never come back.
Yeah. There's not a good solution to that, I don't think. But
it's one of those things where, hopefully everybody ends up at a park that they enjoy. And it's up to the local groups too to play to their audience, so to speak. So, if there's only one or two people who are like, yeah, we want to ditch all the time, then you say, well, sorry, but if that's the case, find another LARP that because we're gonna, most people here enjoy this. Or if you're at a park where it's like, hey, all we want to do is ditch, and that's what all the people that run it are like, then hopefully those people find another group that they can be a part of that suits their needs.
Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit, and let's talk about some V8. How much wizarding have you done in V8?
So more recent years, I have stuck to more shooting a bow. I actually was mostly playing assassin, so I could just duck out of combat when I wanted to, because I really didn't want to do melee fighting. And then my Squire Rayloff convinced me to start doing it as druid, so that I could at least still do some casting and keep in practice with it. But I was playing wizard pretty solidly from the advent of V8 to close to the pandemic at the very least. Before essentially I just started getting more and more out of shape, and I didn't feel like I could keep up, as I used to be able to. But even though I came from a time when like I could point at somebody 100 feet away and kill them, or turn somebody into an unstoppable juggernaut monster, I actually really liked the changes that V8 presented, because I always thought it was unfair that they had the 1 per 10 rule. Not because it wasn't like a balancing factor, because that was needed, but like I didn't like that people didn't get to play the class they wanted sometimes because, well, Joe called it first, and so we have a 1 per 10 rule. You have to play something that you don't like to play.
Mm-hmm.
And that immediately turned me on to the idea. I didn't like a number of the spell changes at first, but then it was a work in progress, and some of it got changed. And so, like, the biggest thing I noticed was one of the big changes that did happen from V6 to V7 was they put a 12 spell ball limit on how many you could carry at once. So no more carrying 30 fireballs and going around raining fire on people endlessly. You had 12 to work with. Well, V8, however many you buy is what you get. So I went from being able to carry 12 spell balls to being able to get up to like, I think 31 at the time when it started. So me being more of a spell ball, wizard, I absolutely loved that change. And the fact that like A lot of it was less unfair. Another change from V7, they halved the count, so instead of 5 minutes, it was 2.5 minutes for most things. Changing that down to 60 seconds at most was another huge thing that I liked about it. So then you're not taking people out of having fun in the game for longer. So, I immediately took to just the idea of playing an evoker and, being able to have this much greater variety of spell balls, but still a lot of them that I could use to, suit different situations.
I feel about only being allowed to have 12 spell balls. That seems like such a... Like, I'm trying to think through all my spell lists, and I think there's only, unless I'm doing evoker, I don't think I ever carry more than 12.
Mm-hmm.
But, because if I took all 6 ice balls before they changed ice ball to make it max 3, you could take 6 ice balls, 4 lightning bolts, 4 fireballs, pair of phase bolts, and a sphere. That's a big stack.
Yep.
So, yeah, I guess I did get over 12 regularly for a while there, but 12 feels like a good number to be like, yeah, that's enough. But,
I mean, when your spell balls are able to kill somebody in plate, I definitely agree.
Definitely that feels like a different thing. And then, if you have unlimited numbers, if it's because all of our spell balls now have caps on them, right? You can only buy 1 sphere.
Yeah.
You can only buy 6 ice balls. Well, 3 instances.
Well, you could always only buy 1 sphere, and in fact, I think that was always buy and carry 1 because unlimited spheres would have been somehow more ridiculous than we already were. But continue.
I could see that being a decent trade-off, though. Be like, hey, I really like lightning bolt. All right, well, I'm gonna get 12 lightning bolts. That's all my spell balls. There are merits to both systems, I think. And I kind of like the idea of 12 lightning bolts and seeing what I could do with that. Maybe I'll make a custom monster at some point. Put me in a nice...
I've heard people float the idea of doing like a V6 versus V8 kind of game, where one side, a smaller number presumably, would get to play with V6 rules, and then everyone else would have to play by V8.
The only question I have is, do you get V6 respawns?
It can't be like an objective-based game, because that side would just lose as soon as they're all dead.
I can't think of a type of game where maybe a shatter battle, like if you took the V6 or the V6 life pool idea and gave it to the V8 people as well, then maybe. But I don't think that's gonna end the V8's gonna rock you, because everything is V8 is so much faster than V7. Doomsday sounds cool, but you have to count to 350 to pull off a Doomsday. You're not getting to 350. Some archer is going to snipe you from, forever away. And
No, here's the balancing point. The V6 people have to do the 5-minute death count, but the V8 people have to take the full count on Ice Ball. So full 5 minutes for that.
Oh no. I mean, we have so much release now in our game.
Which is you got to stand there for 5 minutes, but somebody could just come up and release you now.
Also, there's the subtle meta of it's going to be a lot of older people on the V6 team, because they'll be like, all right, who remembers V6? And all the old geese, I remember V6 back when short sword was the best spell in the lightning. You could have 12 lightning bolts, and they're going to meander over there. And all the young kids are going to be over here all right, time to run circles around these old geezers. But you also then have all the, a higher proportion of Paragons and Knights on the V6 team.
We would have Manima, so...
Maybe he wants to be V8. Hard to say.
Hey, Manima has been playing this game almost as long as I have. He came into our park, I think the year after or 2 years after me. So if he's not V6, man, what's that?
He has to play V9. He's on his own team. So we've got V6 over here. We got V8 over here. Manima's over there doing V9 all by himself. And now we've got the giant cross game.
I'm on board with this.
This could be great. Talking about a broken battle. Not a simple battle game.
Manima, you want to prove that V9 works, you have to carry it by yourself.
You have to beat V6 by yourself. He'd probably try. Man, that was great. Okay, so in V8, I'm going to ask you some class questions now. All this is V8 driven, because that's where we are now, and people want to know how to be Paragons now here in V8. Yep. I do want to know Was it V6 or V7 that you got your masterhood in?
Uh, I was trying to think of this earlier today. I think we were still V6, but like right around the cusp of it, honestly, because V8 started in something like 2012, and we'd been on V7 for a while. So I'd like to say it was still V6, but it was towards the tail end of V6.
Yeah. So, well, I'll ask you some more Paragon questions towards the end of the interview about some technical things about the way that's changed. But let's talk about V8 Wizard, because honestly, Wizard's just the bestest class in the whole world, and I'm super excited to talk about it. I've been talking
I'm
about all
biased
these other
about it.
classes, and, it's time to talk about Wizard stuff.
Very well.
So, in V8, what do you think makes Wizard unique?
The fact that we have basically, whereas most classes have a couple of different things that they can kind of shift into, Wizard is all about offense. Wizard is the most focused offensive class in the game. And that's not to say, like, obviously, like, Assassin is very offensive, but they're more based around moving in and out of combat when they want to, and taking advantage of people not being able to affect them. So there's also a lot of things that they can do where, like, it helps them get to game objectives more easily and all that. And so there's, when you see the archetypes on them, they kind of shift one way or another with some of that. Druid, like, each of their specs is leading on a different aspect of it. Whereas with Wizard, it's like, what are my archetypes? I'm going to focus on killing people more. I'm going to focus on killing people more with spell balls. Or I'm going to focus on killing people more with verbals. And of course, that's simplifying it. We also have all these neat little states that we can put people in. But, we are hyper-focused on the offensive, whereas a lot of other classes have different, roles that they can generally take depending on what they're better suited for, what they prefer. Whereas if you're a wizard, if you're not going out there and ruining people's days by freezing them or killing them, then you're really not performing at that Paragon level. And that's not to say that you can't be like a more supportive wizard, and that's not valid. But I think when we're talking the meta of the game, we have one role and we do it better than any other class.
So Wizard has a lot of really great spells, and there's a mild amount of support in there as well. But what are some of the skills that a Wizard player can have and overlap with other classes, or how do other classes overlap with Wizard?
A big thing that I always feel like with Wizard, there is, all things considered, this is kind of a byproduct of our main role, but it's also something that, it's not something that we well as certain other classes because of their survivability. We are good at pulling aggro, and that is something that I feel that's a cross skill of like having that presence, of essentially pulling attention away from other people, and that was one of the things that really kind of distinguished me on the field earlier on in my career is a matter of like, if you're not paying attention to me, then I'm going to do something that's going to make you want to pay attention to me. And then if you're paying attention to me, other people are going to ruin your day now. So that's having a presence on the field, I think, is really something that also translates to other classes, because there's times when you're playing a warrior or a paladin or an anti-paladin or something like that that's meant to take that attention away and meant to take the hits for people. Pulling that attention takes that presence, that kind of a charisma, so to speak, of making yourself threatening to the other group.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. So what does Wizard do that fills some of the basic roles on the battlefield? Like, obviously Wizard's really good at midlining. Are there any other roles that Wizard can fill exceptionally well?
I mean, given our lack of support, overall support spells, it's definitely, harder to find specific roles like that. But like, since we can get release, we can, use that to our advantage and provide some support. A little bit of mending here or there with, especially when you get Spadoinkle. But there was another thought I had there, and it's poof, gone. Essentially, yeah, like, we do have that limited capability of being able to put a fair number of points into stuff like release and kind of provide that relief of like if our healer's down, we can go in and take that role. Honestly, though, like I'm having trouble really thinking of much else at the moment.
Wizard does kind of get pigeonholed into that midline aggro position quite a bit. I've seen Wizards flank and do flanking fine, but in any other position, you can't really frontline well as a wizard. You know, you can't really backline very well as a wizard because you just don't have enough support. So it's a limited spot there. But
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those things where we have one role, but we do it better than any other class.
yeah. So which wizard spell do you like the best?
I was thinking on this as well, and kind of with Force Barrier, man. No, absolutely not at all. Uh, sorry, I had to get a reaction. I would honestly have to say probably Lightning Bolt, because I am more of a ball wizard, and it's the most versatile by far. Like
Yeah.
Ice Ball, sure, is really good for locking the other team down, and it's probably the single most powerful spell ball that you get, just because you can essentially create icicles all around you. But having that spell where it's like if you hit somebody, you could kill them, or if you don't kill them, you're at least going to stop them.
Mm-hmm.
It brings in the fact that it's a spell or a school that's people aren't commonly immune to it. I feel like there's a lot of factors to it that make it probably the best and most versatile, spell ball. So if I had to like pick one spell ball that I would only be able to take 12 of, it would probably be Lightning Bolt in V8.
Yeah, I also am very fond of Lightning Bolt. I think it's really good. I like it better than Fireball. Like Fireball is better at killing, but worse at making sure that I don't get killed.
Yeah, and generally speaking, if you're going to use a Fireball in a situation where you're going to try to use a Fireball to usually against somebody really armored,
Mm-hmm.
in which case you're going to destroy their armor, but you're not going to stop them. So you have to have something as a backup after that, or else you're probably going to get charged and killed.
Now, Lightning Bolt into a pair of Fireballs, crisp.
Absolutely.
It just works so good. Okay, now, which spell do you like the least? And I'm going to put you on hard mode. You can't say Force Barrier.
Oh, man. I don't even use it to remember the name.
What does it do?
It makes people fragile.
Oh, Ravage.
Ravage, yeah.
Ravage is
I have never
spell.
in my. I mean, I'll admit they've done things to improve it.
Ravage is terrible, and that's why it's great.
Yeah, even getting 2 of them doesn't feel like it's worth the points.
It's not good. It's not meant to be good.
I mean, it's better since they made some updates to it, but like, if I'm casting a verbal on somebody and it's a death spell, I want it to do more than just make them fragile for a follow-up to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just... Fragile is one of those things where it's not as useful, or it's not useful as often as you would hope.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've got a special spot in my heart for Ravage just because I spent too much time practicing it. Like... At one point, I was trying to get good at Wizard, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, Ravage is the worst spell." I'm like, "Oh, it is? Is it? Okay. Well, if I can use the worst spell to kill the best player, that means I'm pretty good." So I spent way too much time mastering Death Survive Thy Flesh and Make Thee Fragile, to the point now I'm kind of upset that they buffed it by making Death Makes Thee Fragile. Like,
yeah.
Like, let it be the bad meme spell, guys. Now, if I was going to buff Ravage... just make it recharge ×1. Because then, hear me out, if you take 1 Ravage and 1 Wounding, you have a naturally rechargeable kill combo.
But you have to Ravage them first.
You have to Ravage them. That's the downside. Like, hey, do you want to spend 2 points and have an infinite kill combo? Yes, I would. But you have to Ravage them. Fine, I guess. Like, I've got a video on the channel about all the different kill combos that Wizard get. I did a 7-part video series about why Wizard's the bestest class ever and how to play it. And in that, I talked about how of all the kill combos, there are obviously tiers of states. Like Frozen S tier, they can't do anything. It's great. Fragile is objectively the worst state you can put on someone because it's very unuseful. They can release themselves. They can go, it doesn't stop them from moving, so they can still chase you. Like there's just so many negatives to Fragile. It doesn't get rid of their armor. Like if you put Fragile on a 6-point warrior, does he care?
Yeah, I mean, if you can follow up with the wounding and kill them, oh, great,
Right.
But like,
And it's so wordy. That's the big flex. Is like,
yeah,
I can do the Ravage wounding combo. I've pulled it off. Like, that's good.
yeah,
It
and it has so few ways to make someone fragile too.
it's a very uncommon, like that and Contagion, and then like playing certain monster classes are pretty much the only way to get fragile in our game. Other than sometimes game runners will put it on objectives. Like if you're carrying a flag, you're fragile.
Yeah.
So
Although anymore, it feels like they use Vol a little more than that, so that's already like, well, you get tapped, you're dead anyway. Like
yeah,
anything on you.
yeah, that's a design decision that I don't
Mm.
necessarily love. Like it tends to lead to turnovers a lot more frequently, and so it's a lot harder to make plays at that point. But that's a design decision. And at some point I'll have some Smiths on and we'll talk smithing things. But today we're talking about the glorious wizard things.
I mean, I'm a smith too, so
Well, you'll have to come back for that.
fair enough.
When you were playing wizard, talk to me
Mhm.
about so you like to play a lot more spellball wizard. Are you usually
Yep.
taking evoker then?
So less these days anymore, or like less the last few times I've played it.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of depends though too. So the last big one that I did was Keep 21, I think it was.
Okay.
Because I think it was the first one after COVID. I ended up on a team. It was whichever one where we were all fighting under banners, and I and a few people close to me all chose the banner that was we'll create our own team. It was just images rather than the words and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the implication of it. But we just had to grab that flag because it's a Futurama reference.
Right.
And we ended up joining up with some other teams because we were like 4 people. And it was myself, Rayloff, and a couple other people, not relevant to the story at the moment, regardless. We had joined up with another team to do this troll battle.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 2 sides to it. On each side, one of the smaller number of people from one team was playing trolls that would respawn at these mushrooms, and the higher number of people from the other team, they were all playing, just the regular class with no additional things to them, and they were trying to burn the mushrooms. But we, as the trolls, got to play our abilities, and so the idea was your team on one side was trying to destroy their trolls, and then your trolls were also just trying to survive. So I got to play one of the 3 trolls. It was Rayloff as a bard, myself as a wizard, and I believe his name was Sin as a warrior. And I played wizard for that, and that was a situation where I knew absolutely I cannot just be spellballs. I'm going to have a dispel to take down one of the other team's people because they're going to have an enchantment on there that's going to ruin our day. And sure enough, I that came in absolutely handy.
Mm-hmm.
And generally speaking, most of the time I'm playing it's at Keep, or at least when I've been playing Wizard was at Keep, and those are usually games where in that case was a slightly special exception into this, but most other games I'm playing Spellball Wizard, and it's a lot better for me to cast my Spellball, throw it, deal. By this point the team is done dealing with these people, and we push past that. I grab my Spellball and continue on. If I had been Evoker, that would have been wasted because I would have just kept having to recharge it and reuse it because I would only really throw a couple Spellballs at a time, and then it's better to pick them up then. But it's just also something where, like, I found, being in a midline situation, it's more often it's often more valuable to throw these spell balls at the other team, have my team push past them, and then just grab them. And usually, I don't need to throw them out as rapidly in most cases because my team's also dealing with the front line. And in those couple of push situations where we really need it, I would just buy the maximum number of elemental barrages and use it.
Mm.
So I do kind of feel like that's one thing about Evoker where, obviously in that situation with the trolls, I felt a need to have a verbal that I wouldn't have been able to use with Evoker.
Right.
And in most cases, that limitation, because of the fact that it's, a charge 10? It's... Yeah, you get, you can still use Steel Life Essence and you can get it back immediately. But in situations where you don't have ready corpses around you, that's a bit of an ask in a large-scale game like that to have to do it as often as you would need to. So I just kind of got out of the mindset of using it after the kind of the novelty of it wore off. And I kind of feel like Evoker is one of the weaker archetypes because of that. Because I don't feel what you're getting for it is worth what you're sacrificing for it as much.
I would agree with that. The biggest problem for me with Evoker is if you're doing it optimally, your respawn is just too long. Because by the time you die, you have to remember where all your spell balls are. You have to go pick up 40-some spell balls. I mean, now with, what is the current limit on Force Bolt? Force Bolt can go, you can buy 8 Force Bolts now, which is just... Why would you need 24 Force Bolts? Okay. And somebody's like, because you have 24 weapons on the other side. It's still bad, but whatever.
It's 24 arrow hits. I mean, it's...
Okay, but there are so many other spell ball. Why are you wasting time making 24 Force Bolts? It's a meme. It's a meme build meant to specifically irritate me. And
I will absolutely run that at one of these events to annoy you.
You know what? Do it. I dare everybody out there... Run Elemental Barrage with nothing but 24 Force Bolts. Prove me wrong.
The Maylock having an event, I'm running games, so I can't do that. But I will make sure... I won't do it at Kingdom, because that's... I don't want to deal with finding them at a Kingdom event. Capture the Flag Invitational. I will run a build of nothing but Force Bolts just to annoy you.
You're going to run Force Bolt Elemental Barrage at CTFI?
I'm thinking I might have to now, just to prove...
prove it. Do it.
Prove it, yeah. So, okay, no, sorry. It'll be all Force Bolts and 1 Sphere of Annihilation, just to surprise you.
I feel like...
For that clinch.
If you've got the duffel bag full of 24 Force Bolts and the sphere is either the second ball you throw or the last ball you throw. Like, it's like, oh ha! Force Bolt, Sphere of Annihilation, Force Bolt, ooh, gotcha. But, anyway...
No. It's one of those things where, like, I just save it for that one push. Like, all you see me throwing is Force Bolts from my bag, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, he's just gonna throw Force Bolts at me. Hold up your shield, and then I sphere it, and then I Force Bolt you.
Okay. Speaking of Force Bolts, how do you build your spell balls? What do you use for those?
So it's harder to get a hold of them anymore, but Gamma Balls was one of my ready sources for a while. That or like practice baseballs if you can find the soft enough ones. Mm-hmm. But I haven't had to build them in so long since I'm really like anal about finding my spell balls and my equipment on the field. But I like the consistency of something that's just always that same size and that same weight. That consistency is very helpful for making sure that I'm not like, oh, I throw this hard and it goes this far. I throw this hard and this goes this far. And I throw this one and it goes like 2 feet further and I miss the guy entirely.
Yeah. Having consistent spell balls is important. Also the aesthetic of having the same spell balls, just crisp.
Now, fun fact, and this has everything to do with my newness to the game and frankly some questionable safety standards about early V6 construction. My first spell balls, I actually took Pool Noodle, and they actually had solid Pool Noodle at the time.
Oh.
It was also the right size for our weapons, not like a 1/4 inch too short. I hollowed it out a little bit and put pennies in it, then taped it up, and that was my first spell balls.
Ah, yes, metalcore spell balls. The true meta.
This was a time when you could put rice in your throne weapons, and that was a valid core. That is also why we have somewhere in the rule book, I believe it specifically says that you cannot have granular cores because they're referring to rice.
As soon as your core gets wet one time, just the nastiest smell and spill. Like, haha! I threw my sushi roll at you. I can tell it's very old. Oh,
But yes,
boy.
those I don't even know if that was technically legal at the time, but we were a small park and all that. They didn't last very long before I started using the bundled, the loose balls of rubber bands because that was somewhat easy to work with. And then at one point I was a poor young adult and I started using scrap material, which was of course not very consistent. And then once I got to the point where I could afford them, I said consistency, and I've stuck with that ever since.
Are there any weird rules interactions with Wizard that you're aware of?
Um, Not with the spells that I generally use, but that's also mostly being a spellball related wizard and running that, and also not really playing in the meta much for the last 5 or 6 years at least, because I'm not retired per se, but I'm also just very very lazy in my old age, and shooting somebody from across the field is much more appealing to me right now than being like 20, 30 feet away and pelting them with spell balls.
Fair enough. All right. I want to talk about teamwork for a minute because teamwork breaks V8 every time. How can other classes best support wizards?
Um, Take the attention away and let the wizard prove that they should have the attention, and then just ping pong the attention back and forth.
Okay.
Make sure that they don't want to ignore you, but then if they do ignore you, or if they don't ignore you, then they're also ignoring somebody else that will kill them.
Okay. Are there any enchantments that you particularly love to have when you play wizard?
Oh man, yeah, and unfortunately, it's something that only other wizards can give me. Yeah, Void Touched is very nice, especially if you are um, using a lot of chargeable abilities, because infinite Steel Life Essences is always fun. Plus, just being able to curse people is a nice little bonus. But yeah, I generally don't remember if people give me something that gives me armor, so that's kind of wasted on me.
Fair enough.
Um, but also then having like a little shadow step to be able to get out of trouble is nice. And it's such a versatile enchantment. Um, all things considered. Yes, it sucks being cursed, but you can still heal yourself with your Steel Life Essence. So, um, that said, I probably wouldn't expect anybody to use it on me these days anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really doing the wizard thing at the kingdom level as much, and as we've already established, you're doing a lot more druid or assassin archery these days.
Yeah, and that's not to say that if I really put effort into it, I couldn't perform at that level again. But again, I'm just out of shape and getting older.
Time comes for everybody. Uh, so wizard being all offense, what is wizard particularly weak to?
Um, Basically, any melee class getting closing that gap. The term glass cannon is very appropriate. And it's a little bit better now that we've got those the mage staffs to work with, but it's still not great for defense. And all things considered, like if you are at a point where you have let melee get up to you, you're pretty screwed.
Yeah. Okay. How do you overcome that weakness? How do you prevent those melee classes from getting up directly into your personal space?
Make sure you are accurate in what you're throwing at them, that you can put them in states that will prevent them from getting to you, and when all else fails, swift teleport away.
Yep. I feel like if you want to be a good wizard, you have to go to the General Grievous School of Strategy, which is the emergency retreat early and often. Just
Yeah,
the first sign of
that's a
trouble,
good way of putting it.
time to retreat. I'll be back in 10
We
minutes.
have fewer limbs to lose than he does, though.
That's
But yeah, like clutch, and this is something that I've had other players that are operate on a high level for me, or that I've known. Um, having a swift teleport, that is one thing that I always have on my spell list is 2 swifts, 2 teleports.
It gets you out of so much trouble. Just, oh, the barbarian went into fight after. I mean, they don't fight after death anymore, but oh, they went into fight after death. Time for me to teleport back to base and just walk real slowly, and you're done. We're back. Okay, here we go.
And the fact that you can take yourself out of it at any time is also very nice.
Yeah, if they ever need to nerf teleport, that's what they have to do is take away the ability to come out early, and that would suck at that point.
And we didn't used to have it. If you chose a destination, you had to go there, and unless somebody took you out of it somehow.
Okay.
But we still had the same thing of you didn't have to go to like as swiftly as possible to it. So
Okay, so you could meander around. So you could see, I'm going to teleport 2 feet behind me, but I'm going to make a 50-foot loop to get there.
well, no, you still had to go directly there, but you had to go to you could set your own pace.
Gotcha. Okay. So for more general battle gaming stuff, this is where we're going to talk about big fields versus small fields. How does Wizard play differently on small fields versus those big fields?
I'd say it's a lot more dangerous to people on the small field unless you are up against like your absolute weaknesses in the game. So like a bard will generally have the tools to be able to deal with you pretty easily if they're good at, especially if they're good at switching songs. And you know, scout if they decide they pick up on what class or schools of magic that you're using more often, they give themselves that immunity. They're obviously just gonna, you know, shrug off your stuff and go after you. But like if you're up against a warrior in 6 points of plate and you know that ahead of time, tailor your list to them. You just take them out with verbals, and you've just neutralized their biggest, heaviest tank. So, yeah, it's. I feel like on the small scale, generally speaking, wizards have more tools to deal with things, and per refresh spells then also become less of a like, oh, I don't have to use them as often because you know there's like 50 targets over there, and I have to choose carefully. Oh, there's 4 people on that side. Point and click, point and click, point and click, and now we've got the objectives, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Okay. So if you were building, let's say, hypothetically, your house burns down, you have to rebuild your wizard kit. What is the minimum gear that you would want to build for your minimum wizard kit?
All those spell balls, though.
Yeah. What's the minimum spell balls you'll accept?
I'm gonna have to have ice balls. I'm gonna have to have lightning bolts and probably sphere. Because if I had to limit to say, you know, it'd be what 8 now because we're down to what 3,
yeah,
or is it 3 ice balls, 4 lightning bolts, and a sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be my first picks. If I had to choose less than that, then that would be a much tougher choice.
I think that's fair. So for you, when you're going into like a kingdom battlefield, what does your ideal kit look like? How many what spell balls are you bringing to the if you're just playing that generalist, not the evoker list? What are you bringing?
To be honest, like I go pretty all in on spell balls.
Okay. You're bringing as many in all of them as you can.
Yeah, the one I don't really do is again, I'm having trouble thinking of it because I never take it. What was it?
Suppression bolts.
Yes.
Yep.
Suppression bolts. I almost never take it because if there is a situation where I want to suppression would affect the other team adversely or would be a clinch to prevent them from doing something, Ice Ball does the same thing and it prevents them from doing anything until they're released.
Right. Suppression bolt feels good as a level 2 spell, but like if you're playing level 2 and you need something, you know what I mean? Like you never played level 2 in V8, so if you've gotten your 4 weeks in at level 1 and you're like, all right, now it's time to play at level 2, and you've got a healer or a wizard or somebody on the other team and you can't consistently deal with them, you can use the suppression bolt. But outside of that, Like as soon as you hit level 3, they're just better spell balls available, and it just feels
Yeah.
bad to have them. Like, why would I want Suppression Bolt? It doesn't do enough. What would you add to Suppression Bolt to make it enough, do you think?
I don't know if it maybe at least did like could wound people as well.
Yeah.
That might kind of help a little bit. Or I don't know. I've seen talk of like adding a mechanic to say like this was more of a bard concept sort of thing where like there would be an effect that could essentially not dispel but like disable enchantments on the other player.
That's one of my two pitches. So I've got 2 pitches.
Okay, yeah.
Making,
I do remember you putting. You're not the first person I've heard that from, actually. But like, because Rayloff actually had talked about this as a way to fix Bard several years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like just as a temporary, like, okay, you don't have that enchantment anymore. You're not dead. It's still there after the duration, but yeah.
It suppresses your enchantment. Like, I like that idea so much of, hey, yeah, my spell ball here doesn't kill you. It doesn't strip you of your enchantments, but no enchantment will work for you for 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, that becomes a terrifying thing for the, like, ooh, I've got the purple one. What are you going to do, Druid? Because they don't fear enough. The other thing that I suggest as a possible alternative to that for Suppression Bolt is make it have an engulfing curse and also do a single wound. Not armor breaking, but just it also wounds.
Yeah. Or hey, if there's not enough effects like this on the field, make them fragile and suppressed.
Oh, okay. An engulfing fragile spell ball? That
Now that you mentioned that, like
that's so dumb. I want it.
We were just talking about there's not enough ways to make people fragile on the field. That there you go. We're fixing 2 things at once.
I love this concept. Just the dork running around like, and actually no, it fixes so much of the problems with Ravage, because if you look at Fragile as a state, the problem with Fragile is if you get anybody with Fragile, they're just going to release themselves. Like healers, wizards. Does Bard get release? I feel like Bard gets release.
Yeah, Bard gets everybody gets release.
I don't remember.
Like
everybody.
There's so many releases.
Like, Scout gets release. Do any of the other marshals get release? It doesn't matter. That's the problem with Fragile, is they're like, oh, I'll just release myself out of it. But if you put that onto the Suppression Bolt, like, not only can you not cast any spells for 60 seconds, you're also fragile until you get that released.
Yep.
I love that idea so much. We got to get... Hang on. I'm going to make a note so I can bug our rules rep about that. It's probably too late to try to get it in, but...
I all things considered, though, like, in its current state, so the Suppression Bolt, it just doesn't do enough. Like, and I don't know, keeping it in a pure suppression... if there's a way to make it better, because it's already engulfing. What more can you do? Like, yeah, adding a wound to it, in certain cases, okay, that's going to be a little bit better. So, you kill somebody occasionally or wound them while suppressing them. But that's such a minor thing, and there's other spell balls that are going to do that better after second level.
Spell balls that make you fragile.
No, there aren't. And
it even combos with Force Bolt at that point, because you can...
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So, okay. Suppress and fragile them first.
So before the CTFI, we're gonna get this push changed, and then I'm gonna do an all Force Bolt and Suppression Bolts build, and then go on the field and annoy you.
I don't hate that idea though. Like if that was relevant, if we got Suppression Bolt to also make you fragile, at that point Force Bolt's good. Like that becomes a legitimate strategy. I kind of want that to happen, but
it's probably not. But
I mean, no,
we can be hopeful.
Let's here's the new strat. We're gonna get the channel blown up so that everyone involved in Amtgard's a subscriber. We'll republish this segment, and that'll be the big push. Everyone will be on board.
I mean, all things considered, you realize anything that gives wizards more power is not going to be very popular among the non-wizards.
I think the problem that people are missing a lot of times is that more power is not necessarily more power. It's different power. And
That's fair.
There's a difference between saying like, oh hey, wizard that only ever does battle mage, icy blast shatter build, and that's all you do. You take those three things, dump everything else into innate, and then like, oh, you bought your short sword, okay, cool. Like, you're not a
But
real
these
wizard
days,
at that point. Like,
yeah, but these days though too, like that's not as valid of a build because a scout will then just go out and ruin your day. A bard has always had ways around that because they've got
freedom,
multiple songs that can technically deal with that.
right? I'm just saying that the meta builds that we have right now are the meta for a reason, and it's
Yeah,
because Frozen as a state is so much more optimal than all the other states. And if you and the again, I talked about this in my my kill combo comparison video, which I'll try to remember to put a link in the description for here. But in the kill combos comparison video, I talked about this. Every other kill combo that you get as a wizard is almost unplayably bad because of paladin and anti-paladin being pro command. That,
yeah.
like, if you look at the amount of pro command that is on our field, because you've got paladin, anti-paladin, barbarian, and basically druid, if we're being honest. Like,
Mhm.
if you're a frontline druid, you're probably doing Avatar of Nature and you're probably running lycanthropy. So that right there makes command such an undesirable school that it makes it so that other options for kill combos are significantly less desirable. Because if I take Icy Blast Shatter, that hits everybody. They're sorcery. Nobody's naturally immune to sorcery. I can hit everybody with that. If I take any other kill combo, I now have to build around multiple kill combos, and you can't get multiple. Like, if experienced was max 4 instead of 2, maybe that would be different. I doubt it, but maybe. So different power is better than more power, because then you're making
Yeah.
interesting decisions. It's better for the meta, it's better for the community, because being frozen isn't fun. But like, oh hey, that guy hit me with the suppression bolt and made me fragile, and now they're casting ambulant wounding. Can I run away fast enough? Like, that's some yakety sax shenanigans right there. And yeah, it makes wizard theoretically more powerful, but it's not more powerful than the powerful way they already are. It's just more powerful in a different way, making that alternate play style more appealing, and maybe getting rid of some of that sameness in all the wizard builds.
Yeah, I see your point.
Sorry about
And I'm
ranting,
not
but
saying, yeah, no, you're fine. Uh, all things considered, it's not that I even disagree with you on that. It's just the perception externally from non-wizards who don't understand the class as well, or they just see what wizards get. And that's not to say either that we're not, like, as a class, generally speaking, better than other classes in a number of ways.
right.
I would argue that in V8 we are not the most powerful class personally, but
Yeah,
I also see where the perception on what we can do is highly valued in games, and so therefore oftentimes that leads to a perception of being overpowered compared to some of the other classes. And some people will argue over like who the best class is in the meta and all that. And I'm not saying that Wizard's not a contender, especially compared to some of the other underpowered classes. But that perception is also what prevents certain changes from happening, because it's like, well, we want these changes, and they're like, well, do you want them? You want them over Scout? Like Scout needs more help, and well, okay, now Scout's fine, but like, well, monks are underpowered now, so they need more attention than you guys, and you just be thankful for what you got.
just because a class is powerful doesn't mean that it shouldn't get some tweaks and some balance patches, and like it. Yeah, it's a whole thing. And
Yeah,
if people want to know more about that, you can go and watch my very controversial "How I Would Fix the Wizard Class" video, because boy was that controversial. But let's move on a little bit. I want to talk to you about how you build your spell lists. So when you are getting ready to play a game, you could talk about Druid here as well, because it's still building a spell list. Walk me through your
yeah.
process. How do you build your spell lists?
Well, it just kind of depends on the game. If it's like the troll battle game I mentioned at Keep a few years ago, That's one where I was like, ooh, we need to make sure that I have the tools to, take care of these scenarios so that my teammates can handle their team, and like I can shore up their weaknesses. So like if there's an enchantment, I need to be able to disable or to dispel that, and if there's somebody with a lot of armor, I need to be able to have my fireball to take down that armor, and just stuff like that. I'll generally kind of look at like what scenarios are going to likely happen, and if it's a big battle game, I'm going to focus more on the things that I can reuse more often, and all that. And as a druid in those situations, I generally go more support, so that I can just you're down on armor while I'm shooting my arrows back here. Well, come over here. Here's your armor back. Go back to the front lines and just keep shooting. As a wizard, it's a little harder to do that for larger battle games, but I also probably about 75% of the time have a spell list that I just generally like to run, and I use it. And with the druid, it's remarkably simple. I have a bow, I have ice balls, icy blasts for a clinch, and the rest is all support so that I can shoot my bow from the back lines and not have to worry about it.
Okay.
But as a wizard, it's just generally I want as many spell balls as I think I can handle, and then a couple of my usual defensive spells. Like I said, I always do 2 swifts, 2 teleports, and then it just kind of depends on the battle game. Sometimes oh shoot, there's a high priority target. I know he is going to have something I want to dispel, so take my dispel. Nobody out there that I really need to worry about, so maybe I'll put in some more fun stuff, So there's a little bit of change in there, but I'm also, and I cannot stress this enough, remarkably lazy. And so I don't want to put a lot of thought into my spell lists anymore. So about 75% of the time, I am just going with what I generally know will have useful effects on the battlefield.
Okay. How do you carry your spell balls?
So I actually have kind of a thought out system for this. I have a spell pouch. I don't even remember what it originally was. It was like a tool bag like an old tool bag that was in our shed back in the house I was living in when I first started Amtgard. And there's 2 pockets to it. There's a main pocket where I keep anything that can, all my spell balls that can wound people except for my sphere, which I always keep in a separate pocket. So it's always, I know I can get it right here. And then I have an outer pocket that has all my entangles and my ice balls. So primarily my engulfing ones in particular. And then I also have different feeling cloths that I do use for my spell balls. So my ice ball has a silky feel to it. So if I'm reaching in the pocket blindly, I feel silk, kind of, I forget what specific one it is, but not silk. I'm not putting $1,000 into making spell balls, but it's just got that smooth feel to it. And so I reach in, I know that's an ice ball, and I can just cast it without having to look at it and keep my eye off my target, because you're looking in here like, which spell ball am I? Oh, and then arrow to the chest, and you're dead. My entangles then have a slightly rougher feel, and then I do something similar with my spell balls. All my fireballs are silky, all my lightning bolts are just kind of that rougher cloth, and then any other spell balls that I have in the bottom of them are just generally not as often used. So I have a pile of force bolts in the bottom there for if I ever run out of the rest of them. And those just are layered at the bottom, so I don't generally grab them until I'm out of everything else, and I just keep track.
The fabric textures is an interesting take. How long do you make your tails on your spell balls, by the way?
Generally inch and a half, maybe. It's just kind of something where I tape it up, and then I leave a little bit so it's got that kind of actual tail look to it. Mm-hmm. And then I just kind of cut it off. I don't measure it specifically, but I would say it probably ends up being probably about an inch on average.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if I'm just off meta. My spell balls have 4 to 6 inch tails, and I don't see a ton of that out there.
Going back to the V6 days, because of the fact that any part of a fireball touching you would kill you, I actually put ribbon onto one of my fireballs early on, so that when I would throw them, the ribbon would spread and hit more people. It's not really optimal these days, but just one of those many things. It's like, how can I make an already broken ability even more broken?
That's so toxic. I love it. Okay. Do you want to talk about the wizard archetypes?
Battle Mage, it's kind of like you can basically, as a wizard, one of the cheapest builds in the game is to just basically be a Battle Mage with a sword. Because you have to pay for your sword, and then everything else is you're casting verbals. But I also feel like it's kind of overused anymore, and I'm a little tired of seeing wizards feel like they always have to run Battle Mage. Like, I'm not saying that it's not valid, and I'm not saying that, like, people shouldn't do it. I just want to see more people running without an archetype over just choosing to do Battle Mage.
That's fair. I do a lot of Battle Mage myself because I don't want to pick up the spell balls.
Well, like I said too, like if you go out traveling, it's like, oh crap, I forgot all my equipment. Run Battle Mage, and like you don't need
it. Yeah, it's like, oh, is it raining or is the ground slightly wet because it's morning? Battle Mage. Oh, is there more than 10 people in this battle game and my spell balls are going to get kicked all over the place? I'm going to lose track. Battle Mage. Oh, do I just not want to take my belt off and put on my stupid belt carrier again? All right, Battle Mage. It just is so easy to do. I find myself doing that more often than my generalist, even though I think my generalist is more powerful. At least that's the reason I do a lot of Battle Mage, because also any battle game where you're likely to get resurrected, spell balls feel suboptimal, because if you've thrown all of your spell balls and you have to go and get them, like now I can't get resurrected, so longer death count hurts you. Any game where the game, and this is not super common, and I don't mean to like dig at these game runners, but any game runner that says that respawn is at base naturally is going to hurt anyone doing throwies or arrows or spell balls.
Any game that I run, I refuse to have a death count that starts at base. Because it overly punishes the people who have to gather stuff afterwards. And there's a lot of different approaches that people have to making that better, and a lot of different respawn mechanics that are kind of underused that I'd like to see more personally. But the go-to for me is always generally start the count at death, because I especially, as somebody that's been shooting arrows a lot and I've played Spellball Wizard a lot over the years, I hate having to take a minute, which is already longer than the death count, to gather all my stuff, go back to base, and then I've got 30 seconds.
Yeah. It's a feel bad moment, and like if someone says at base, I'm like, all right, I'm not running spell balls because that's just not worth it. And like it's so easy to get resurrected on Kingdom Fields if you don't move.
Yeah.
That it feels better. And so that might be a meta thing. Like if you die and are getting cursed all the time, and it doesn't matter if you're, if someone wants to res you because you're cursed, but it's so easy right now to get rid of the cursed state that anything that you have to go and collect your equipment feels suboptimal. And
yeah,
I do think that spell balls could be a lot more interesting if like you could have more of them at the base. Like I know several people that play Throwy Assassin and they have like 100 throwaways.
Yeah.
And so
but then that's something like with spell balls, you have the fact that you're not allowed to carry, or like, well, carry, sure, but like I kind of feel like that limitation still comes in with like keeping them at base, because then what if you take them from base and you throw them on the field? So most people are going to say, well, no, you can't have any more than that.
You cannot bring more than that. Like I bought 6 or I bought 3 ice balls. I can at most have 3 ice balls touch the field. I can't, like even if I could, when I died at base, pick up 3 new ice balls and start with them, that would be a huge boost to seeing more spell balls, because then I'm not having to run around and look for all of the spell balls. But then you end up with a scenario where you have a lot more spell balls on the field, and so they're a lot easier to recover, because now every time someone dies, they're coming back with a full set of spell balls. So it's a cascading problem, and the problem resists simplicity quite a bit.
Yeah.
And like you don't see that as much. Like if they put a I don't know. I don't know how you can fix that problem. Just, I understand why everyone's running Battle Mage, and it's because of all of those reasons that we just said. Even
Yeah.
though spell balls are cool and I wish we had more of them, I also am personally most of the time unwilling to do spell balls just because of all the reasons I just told you.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of a testament to the design of the archetype that it is so good that it's so widely used and it's something that people feel they need to use. But at the same time, I feel like not having an equally attractive archetype that involves spell balls or any other aspect of playing wizard, it just it makes it so that you're basically always going to have that imbalance. And
If you
and
want
I
to make
don't know
like if you want to fix
what's that.
evoker and make evoker more fun to play and more reasonable to play, just take it from being times 10 to times 3. That's all it takes.
I think that would definitely help a lot. Yeah,
Because then it becomes a matter of, all right, well, I threw my spell balls, I picked them up. Recharge times 3 is very quick. It's not a recharge times 10. Recharge times 10 is a lot of, it's a significant more time investment, and you can, like, this sounds so ADHD of me, but, like, I get bored recharging times 10. Like,
I feel you.
you know what I mean? Like, recharge times 3 is basically free, but you could just be like, all right, either take Elemental Barrage's weakness of like, hey, you can't pick up the spell balls, and just say like, okay, you can't buy Sphere of Annihilation instead, and you can pick up spell balls.
Yeah, I think that was one of the thoughts that I had too. It's like
Or, you know,
getting rid of the limitation there where you can't pick them because there's other ways to get people out of it.
right. Well, also there's this
You can
weird
be
thing
greater
where
released out of it.
people think that with Elemental Barrage that people can hand you back your spell balls,
Nope.
and that's not how that works. Like, the limitation is the magic ends if the caster picks up any additional spell balls or begins casting any new magical abilities. So they're like, well, I didn't pick it up. That guy picked it up and put it in my backpack. I'm like, that is the same thing, and you know it, and you're being bad. And like,
Yeah,
I've had
like
people argue with me about this, and like, I acknowledge that that's what the rules say, but you are not getting around the rules in the clever way you think you are. You're just being a jerk.
yeah.
And
It's also one of those things where I would consider that at best a gray area of like, well, yeah, sure, but here's the thing: it's like
but every game runner would be like, no, you can't do that if you asked them.
yeah, it's a matter of is it skirting the limitation that balances that ability. So, like a big example of that is that why don't we see more like fan weapons in the game? That would be a really a perfect kind of monk themed thing. Well, it's because if you use it as a monk and you're using it in you have this like wide area that's not just like a straight line or whatever, and you've got just this fan that's quasi shield,
Right.
and
Monk shields are
is
real.
even and it's better than a shield as a monk because you can block stuff with it. You can block spell balls with it without it being destroyed or affecting you. So you would just basically have all these people making fans, and well, that's and sure, like it's cool to make a melee weapon like that. I'd love to see the engineering that goes into it, but the thing is then you're skirting the limitation of the class. You're making yourself a shield without it being a shield,
Right.
and that's a balancing point of monk.
I want to talk to you about some Paragon stuff. So
Yes.
before we get into the normal Paragon questions, I want to ask you, what is the difference between someone who got their Paragon in, say, V6 or V7, and then someone who got their Paragon in V8, and then even, I feel like there's 3 eras. There's V6, V7 Paragons, there's V8 Paragons, and then there's after Orders of Battle and Battle Knight Paragons. And I'd like you to walk me through all 3 phases.
I have some real opinions about that last one especially, but we'll get to that. I was thinking through this earlier today as well, and I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed for V6 and V7 is the culture at the time, and this is still valid today, but it's just a cultural difference. You saw a lot more Paragons, well, master classes being given out for reasons other than skill in those eras, or in V6 and V7. A good perfect example is the guy who wrote our Kingdom anthem, the Valley of the Rising Winds, Tarkington Erevin. He was a quintessential bard, but he didn't. I don't remember seeing him play the class a lot. What got him his Paragon Bard was, and he is, I will say, one of the most talented songwriters that I have ever personally known, which basically involves him. But because I don't know a lot of songwriters, but he was performing, I think, at Gathering of the Clans, it was known back then, and he was playing at this Bardic Fire, and there were a lot of people just talking over him and being rude and all that. So he finishes his performance and then just gets up, smashes his guitar, throws it in the fire, and one of the monarchs that was there watching just goes, "Give this man his Master Bard," because he had basically just like proven that, like, you know, he was such a consummate artist that, like, you know, he couldn't stand the people talking over him, or, you know, he wasn't, you know, the performative part of like smashing his guitar and all that. It was just immediately, yep, he's a master bard, he's a musician, and had nothing to do with playing the game at that time, but that was, you know, one of those things that made him stand out at the time. Another one story that I heard from a player that used to play at our park named Doc. He was actually an import from Texas. He was playing Barbarian, and he was fighting in some situation where, like, he ended up like fighting past a tree or by a tree or whatever, and he knocked the tree down. It was a smaller one, of course, but because of the fact that he was raging so much and was so out of control or whatever, that he ended up destroying a tree, he got his Master Barbarian. So you have all these stories of people like doing these cool things, these cool performative things that aren't necessarily like just immediately, oh, like they've always been really great at playing the game, but defined them as that class, and people got the masterhood a lot because they were the class, not because they were good at playing the class.
Okay.
And you saw a lot fewer, masterhoods in that vein being given out, and probably fair to say because we were smaller then, sure. But, like, you also had the fact that it was given out by the monarch, but we also had class guild masters that would administer class tests and things like that, and they had to consent on giving these masterhoods. So I didn't get my master wizard just because, the monarch at the time said that I deserved it. It was because the guild master of wizards at the time said, yes, give him this. So you had that extra layer of that. And we have that to some degree now with the Circle of Paragons as well, where we all discuss it. But there's also that, like, we're unofficial. We don't exactly say, like, yes, give this person this thing, yes, or don't give them to them. And then the monarch says, okay, well, I have to abide by them. They can just basically thumb their nose at us and go, well, sorry, guys, I think they deserve it, and you can't convince me otherwise. And that's not to say that a monarch couldn't technically do that, because it was the way it was worded. Some people interpret it as you didn't have to have the guildmaster's permission. But I feel like the flavor of getting that masterhood, that Paragon, today was a little bit, more, there's more to it than just skill like we have now. When V7, V8 first hit and then continuing on, we saw that transition on that, where, like, because V8 was much better at creating competitive battle games and kind of, as you referred to earlier, more of a sport like atmosphere to it. I feel like we started to get away from, hey, this person is this class. You look at them and they ooze that feeling, and more like, hey, they're really good at this class. And that's not to say that there's never been people who, in V8 that got it for other reasons, but the culture was starting to get past that point. And so, like, that was kind of, in a sense, I feel like that's part of what led to the advent of Battle Master, because it was a matter of like, we want to recognize people for the skill in battle gaming, but not necessarily, we want to give them paragons. But after the advent of Battlemaster and Orders of Battle in general, I really feel like it's taken all flavor away from getting Paragon. And some people still do stuff like that in V8. A good example is Ash. When he got his Paragon Assassin, he made it his goal to assassinate every other class as they were getting their Paragon in court. And so people started really watching him at court to see, okay, he's going to assassinate the next Paragon that gets out. So watch him, and he would still find a way to sneak around and assassinate the next Paragon Wizard, the next Paragon Healer, until they finally said, all right, we get it. Just take Paragonhood. But you also have so many people now where, because the culture has said, hey, we equate this level of Orders of Battle with your first Paragon Hood, and this level with 2, and by the time you got 3, you should be a Battle Master. You have people who are like, okay, what's my next class I'm going to Paragon in? And how do I strategize to be really good at it so that I get the Paragon? Right. And so you don't see people playing Wizard out there like they have the full robe and they have like a beautifully well-crafted staff that they've made just for flavor, and they're going out there with the presence of Gandalf and doing stuff. You have people running up there with a short sword, casting rapidly at people, and then going in and getting a few hits in, then backing off, and then casting at somebody else, and then going and releasing somebody, and this rapid-fire competitive style that's, I feel, valid for Paragon Hood to a certain degree, but you have a lot less attention to the people who give flavor to it. My own standard for Paragon is, if I hear the word wizard, do I think of that person? And if I think of that person, do I think of a wizard immediately? And as you get to the point where you're earning multiple Paragons, that's inherently something that you get away with from, because, well, the first class you think of is no longer, like if the first class you think of is a wizard, can they also be a healer? Well, in some cases, sure, maybe, but by the time you reach that third one, I don't think of them as a wizard and a healer and an archer or a scout, or whatever. It gets muddied in that, and it's of course my opinion, but
your brand
I do feel
getting messed up at that point.
I feel like making it a goal, a sub goal below Battlemaster, has taken away a lot of the importance and the flavor to being a paragon of a class. And I want to see more people out there making the class their own in a way that isn't just like, I'm really good at that, and playing the meta as best I can. Because there's plenty of people who do that. I want to see that person who has found a way to add spell effects to their garb, so that when they cast a spell, it's it's actually putting out lights and sound effects and stuff like that. I actually have something that I bought off of ThinkGeek a few years ago that it's a hoodie that does that. But I want the person. The problem is I couldn't get the right size for me, so it's a little too small, and you have to do very specific motions for it. But a really good example of somebody who made the class their own, Tess, when she got her Paragon Healer, she did it with the archetype that gives out more, that doubles your enchantments and all that. Warden, or Warder, yeah.
Yeah.
She was the only person playing that archetype because people didn't think it was good at the high level, and she proved it was. I want to see people innovating. I want to see people doing things that really stand out for the class, so that when I look at them, I just go yeah, that's a wizard, that's a healer, and they should be good at the class too, sure. But I think we've got too many people who they are a paragon just because they're good at the class. And if you're a battle master, you should be good at pretty much any class that you play anyway. So does that mean we give them every paragon? Or do we look for other things that make them stand out as that class?
With that in mind, what is something that a wizard player can do to really stand out to our Paragon board? Not you specifically, but the board in general. What are they looking for in a Paragon wizard?
I mean, the Circle of Paragons is really just a matter of being on point, being with what spells you're throwing out there, making sure that, like, you're not throwing, say, like, Finger of Death at a paladin or anything at a monk that doesn't affect their equipment. But it's about accuracy. It's about being kind of a menace on the field. And I feel like with Wizard, Wizard has an easier time, I think, getting to that level of like skill, because it's about, like, every Wizard's got the same goal: kill the other team, put them into states towards that goal, and if they're frozen, they're already as good as dead anyways. And essentially just taking out the other team. That's something that gets a lot of attention to people. That's something that makes it look like you're good regardless. It's harder to be a warder and be seen as good on the field because you're supporting people, and that's not as visible. So in a sense, I think it's easier, but at the same time harder, because then it's harder for you to distinguish yourself. Me personally, what I would be impressed at is people doing more generalist builds and using combinations where you're throwing a spell ball, then you're killing them, instead of like, verbal. And I don't know. At this point, it seems like the Circle of Paragons is mainly about, are they competitive, and which is still valid. But me personally, I will passionately defend somebody who goes out there and they're role-playing the class. They are making a distinct look for themselves, so that when you see them on the field, that's a wizard, that's that kind of wizard, or whatever. And just generally making yourself distinct on the battlefield. That's what I will personally look for. And as long as they are keeping up on the battlefield and not necessarily the best of the best, but still competitive, I will passionately defend somebody who is on the field that makes that kind of an impression.
What advice would you give someone who's starting out as a wizard now? Just they're level 1, 0 credits. What advice do you give them?
Definitely try different spell lists. Find something that you really like, but also challenge yourself a little bit here or there. Don't get complacent like I am now. But essentially, especially early on, practice different incantations and use different spell lists and learn what's good for different situations. Because one of the strengths of the wizard class is that you have the tools to deal with different situations, but you also have to plan it out. You have to know your enemy before you can really build your list to suit. So if you see a field and there's like 3 monks out there, you're going to want to do things that'll strategize against getting rid of their equipment, or being able to carefully wound them past their defenses. If you're going up against a number of bards, you're going to have to figure out ways around their songs, because a good bard is going to be able to put up a Song of Deflection here, and then change that quickly to a Song of Freedom there, and at that point your charged Ice Ball is useless. And having that versatility early on, especially getting to know all your spells well, will help you remember, hey, I see that bard over there, I know he's always going to give me trouble because of the spell list that he does, so I'm going to take these extra couple little spells that I know can deal with him very nicely. And to a certain extent, Bard is one of those classes that is meant to counter Wizard, but just getting that versatility will help you find ways around that in more situations then.
Okay. Have you ever taken on a wizard apprentice?
Not especially, no. I've definitely talked shop with a number of people and kind of been a mentor figure to a certain degree in that aspect, but I have not had an apprentice ever since that had become a thing. Honestly, for a long time, I didn't even consider taking on any underbelts, and then I ended up getting a couple notable titles, and well, I'll take on a couple people, and now here I am as a mentor. Did not expect that to happen, but it's not that I'm not open to it, but I also feel like in the current state of things, I am not exactly the person most people will think of to approach.
That's fair. Okay. Now we're coming down to the last three questions, sort of our outro here. What I want to know is, outside of battle gaming, inside of battle gaming, doesn't matter. What are you working on now? What is your next Amtgard goal?
Well, this year, especially since we got an event next weekend, smithing has been a big part of it. Although I am insistent that get my masterhood primarily from doing night quest stuff, and I'm part of this year's keep theme actually, and I am co-creating that with Acrinia, so I'm hoping that will get me a step closer to that master smith. But that's primarily the focus I have right now. I have lofty goals to get into to finishing or to going down the dragon path some more, but I cannot stress this enough. I am a very lazy person, so a lot of that kind of gets lost in the other stuff that I've got going on. But primarily, working on my smithing and also just helping to keep our park going because we've had a kind of a rough winter.
Okay. Can people come up and talk to you at events, talk shop with you?
They'll if it's nighttime, they'll also probably get a couple drinks out of me. So, or an elemental barrage. That's if it's Saturday night, anyways. I don't give them out Friday night because then everybody's coming to me on Saturday, and then I've got like half of them left at most. But yeah, like I consider myself to be a very approachable person, and I will talk shop about anything, and I'll probably talk your ear off. I mean, we've been at this for over 2 hours.
It's been a delightful conversation. It's been so great talking to you tonight. Do you have any final advice before we let you loose?
This is the same thing that I tell people at their vigils, and same thing I asked everybody that came to my vigil. Find the thing in this game that brings you joy. And for me, it was very much playing Wizard at first, but also just so many different things. But find what brings you joy in this game and help that grow. Always find ways to help other people find their joy, and preferably in what you're doing, because that's what you're going to know best. But that joy is what's kept me in this game for 26 years now. I still remember the first day I came out, that first snowy, melty snow day in March. It was cold. I had a sword that I did not know how to use. I took a shot at somebody, dove at them, fell flat on my chest, muddied myself up, and I had the biggest grin on myself by the time I left that day. That joy has followed me through these 26 years, and it is something that I've always I always strive to keep a hold of and to help other people find. So do that, and it will not only help you stay in this game, it will help retain all sorts of other people that will continue to enrich your life and keep you in this game for longer.
Well, a special thank you to Sir Paco for coming on the show, talking to us tonight about Wizard. It's been really fun to go down the history and see how Wizard has changed over the years. If you, the viewer, have made it to the end of this video and you would like to get more battle gaming content, please subscribe. If you have any questions for myself or Paco, please leave them down in the comments. Obviously, we really like talking about Wizard stuff. We will see you in the next video. Have a great night.